Okay, now let's take a look at what's going on, the major transits here in 2024 and 2025. I just remind you that the last hit of transiting Pluto square the Ascendant on October 23rd. It was on October 27th that Israel invaded the Gaza Strip, a major invasion, and declared war, and launched their Operation Swords of Iron. Okay, now, very important here, we have got transiting Pluto oppose the midheaven, starting up, first hit February 2024, running throughout 2024, retrograde hit in August, and the final hit in December. And December is going to be very important, 2024, because simultaneously we have transiting Uranus conjunct the Sun. That starts up in May of 2024. The retrograde hit is also in December of 2024. So there's a major event coming at that time. And it will finalize in March. Now also, and we'll get in and break this down, but I just want to give you the third transit here from Neptune. We've got transiting Neptune, which started up in 2023, extended transit all the way to the start of 2025. And it hits again direct in March 2024, transiting Neptune, square Jupiter, and at the same time, it's going to hit off Pluto in the 10th house, ruling the second house, okay? And that has to do with the financial situation, and we'll get into this. Now, we know that on the first hit of transiting Pluto opposed the Ascendant, opposed the Midheaven, which took place in February, on February 7th, just so you can see how exact and precise this birth time is. It was on February 7th, for example, that Saudi Arabia said no Israel ties without recognition of a Palestinian state. It was on February 5th that the Amnesty International released a report stating that Israel is carrying out unlawful killings, disregard for Palestinian lives, and carrying out numerous illegal acts of violence that constitute clear violations of international law. And I'm reading all of this from Wikipedia with all the sources there, so anybody can follow along. As well, on February 12th, Israel intensifies attacks on southern Lebanon. As well, on February 11th, Israel has targeted Syrian territory 10 times. There is also a widening gap between Israel and its traditional Western allies over what is going on. And then I found this very important, reported on February 4th. And the reason it's important is because we're going to go into the past of when these transits hit the previous time, and you'll see the similarities. Israel is to bring in foreign building workers to replace Palestinians. And, quote unquote, around 72,000 Palestinian construction workers were employed in Israel prior to the attack. So in February of 2024, Israel announced it would bring in 65,000 foreign workers from India, Sri Lanka, and Uzbekistan to resume the construction. So we've got immigration, foreigners coming in to Israel. Keep that in mind. Okay, shifting here between my notes. So with Pluto opposed the midheaven, keep in mind, is the head of state and the government in power. And when we have the transit of Uranus conjunct the Sun also symbolizes the head of state. Now there's a lot of possibilities of what could go on here. And of course we know that Uranus brings in the sudden, the unexpected. So it could be, for example, that the head of state is doing something very independent, a call for independence, also an intensified feeling of ego aggrandizement, and also with Uranus to the Sun, it can be a potential breakup. So there's all sorts of things that could go on there. I think what I want to do is I want to show you what went on the last time these exact transits were going off. Number one, with Pluto to the Midheaven, with Pluto to the Ascendant, with Neptune also to Jupiter, Pluto, and with the Uranus transits. Now, 2 times in the past. We can go back to 2001 through 2004, when all of these transits were happening all together. Let's start there. We've got the Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune transits going on between 2001 and 2004. And what happened? Number one, Ariel Sharon was elected Prime Minister in 2001. Keep in mind, we also have September 11th, 2001, when the World Trade Center came down. In 2002, they launched an operation, Defensive Shield, and they began the construction of the barrier around the West Bank. In 2003, Sharon was being prosecuted for alleged war crimes by the country of Belgium. However, there was an appeal, and it turned out that he could not be tried for these crimes in Belgium because they didn't occur in that country. And then in 2004, what's called the Black Hebrews, were granted permanent residency and citizen rights. And again, here we have immigration and residency and citizenship coming in. So I just bring that up as similar themes with the bringing in construction workers from different countries. That's an awful lot of people coming into Israel. Okay, the time before that was in 1983 and 1984, with the same transits going on with Pluto and Neptune, transiting Pluto, transiting Neptune. In 83, Israeli bank stock crisis. In 83, Begin resigns as prime minister. So we have a resignation of a prime minister, another election in 84 where Perez comes in as prime minister. And in 84, 8,000 Ethiopian Jews were secretly transported into Israel. So you can see that in the past, when we test the past for these transits, we've got a financial situation. Oh, and let me just conclude that 83, 84 period, because by 85, the Prime Minister Perez had brought the inflation under control and brought in a new currency to replace the previous currency, which was called the new shekel. So we definitely have things going on with a potential for inflation, issues with financial situation, and keep in mind that Pluto is in the 10th house ruling the 2nd house, which deals with these kinds of financial issues. We've got the potential here for immigrants coming in to Israel. And we also have the potential of a change, perhaps, with the Prime Minister. Now, the next election is not supposed to be, if my notes are correct, until 2026. However, with the Uranus transit to the Sun, anything's possible. Whether the current Prime Minister would resign, whether something would happen to him, because the Sun is in the 8th house. Well, this has to do with mortality of a country, but there's an awful lot of people that have been that have lost their lives in this situation. I also want to bring another thing to your attention here going on, is that in 2025, then Uranus will go on to square Mars. Okay, so it's going to conjunct the Sun with the last hit in March of 2025, and simultaneously in January of 2025, Uranus will square Mars until March of 2026. And what I want to bring to your attention here is that the previous times that Uranus was aspecting both the Sun and Mars was in 90 and 91, that was the Gulf War, and then in 2013 and 2014, and that was the 2014 Gaza war involving Hamas. So it's definitely a war situation. Well, that's an understatement, but what will come of this? Well, when we're dealing with transiting Pluto opposed to Midheaven simultaneously with Uranus conjunct the Sun, the head of state, certainly there can be the potential for a new government to come in, because the fourth house where Pluto is the other party that's not in power, so that is a possibility. But this is a major identity transformation for Israel. This is a major perspective change, undeniable. It could also be separation from allies of Israel, because the Sun rules the 11th, and that has to do with the aims, desires, goals, purposes, and projects of a nation. It also refers to the allies of the nation and the legislative branches of the government. But with Uranus transit there, this can be, it's Uranus to the Sun is a typical breakup of a relationship aspect, so there can definitely be separations going on here. It's pretty unbelievable, the astrology, but looking over the past, we know that it's going to be dealing with probably the potential for a major financial crisis, loss of lives, obviously, immigration involved here, and of course deception with Neptune involved in all this. So we'll see what goes on. Also, I just want to finalize this by saying that in 2026, March 2026 is going to be very important, because we have the last hit of Uranus square Mars, and we have the first hit of transiting Pluto oppose the Moon, okay, in March of 2026. And, looking back at the last time that Pluto was aspecting the Moon, well, that was in 84, 85, and so we have the inflation coming down under control, new currency coming in, and also, just checking my notes here, in 2003 and 2004, the last time that transit went on, Pluto to the Moon, well, the Prime Minister was under prosecution for alleged war crimes, could happen to the current Prime Minister as well now. And what else? Just looking at my notes here, 2004 is when the permanent residency and citizens' rights were given to the Black Hebrews. Now, at any rate, just looking here, yeah, and that transit's going to finalize, transiting Pluto oppose the Moon. The Moon does rule the 9th house. This could bring in international legal issues. So anything's possible there, and it finalizes in January of 2027. And what's interesting is during that transit, there'll be the next election for the Prime Minister. If it doesn't happen earlier due to a resignation, who knows, due to whatever could happen to the current PM in office. And like I said, during that transit, in October of 2026 is supposed to be the next election for the Prime Minister. So there's an awful lot going on here. Unfortunately, I think that the war situation with transiting Uranus conjunct the Sun, transiting Uranus square Mars, at least until March of 2026, there's going to be a lot of, I think, devastation. And interesting is that on that Uranus transit square the Mars rules the 7th, and that has to do with other nations and public enemies. So, I think that this is going to be a great divide between Israel and who were their previous allies in the past. All sorts of potential here. Anyways, I'm going to wrap this up so it doesn't become too long, and blessings go out to all people involved in this situation. And thank you for listening, and I hope that you found this video informative and insightful, and the birth time accurate for the state of Israel. Okay, thank you for listening. God bless. Bye-bye now.